Thank you, Chair Kudo, and thank you, Regents. As usual, I'd like to start with an update on COVID. We closed out the academic year with 124 cases, and that's over the last 13.5 months with very few instances of transmission on any of our campuses. We've only had one case in the last 2 weeks across the system, and Kauai Community College wins the prize, staying at zero throughout the entire pandemic to date. Congratulations, Regent Westerman. The big news right now is our announcement earlier this week that we would require COVID-19 vaccination for all of our on-campus students. Until this point, most of the input we've been receiving about planning for the fall has been urging us to do everything we can to return to an on-campus normal experience for our students. And we've taken that to heart. That said, you've seen the testimony that came in on this, and we also received similar feedback via email and calls. And I want to thank the testifiers and input. Nearly all of it is extremely civil and thoughtful on a complicated and divisive issue. We knew that our announcement would not be universally applauded, and I want to say our leadership team deliberated at length before coming to the decision we did to institute that requirement. The new guidance from the CDC last week stating that fully vaccinated individuals should not be subject to physical distancing requirements or mandatory mask requirements in most cases was certainly influential in shaping our timing and decision. And ultimately, we chose to stand with the recommendations of both the American College Health Association as well as our own Health and Wellbeing Working Group, which is made up of representative experts and leaders from JABSOM, nursing, pharmacy, public health, and our campus health service providers. Their recommendations were all that a COVID-19 vaccine mandate could be the best way to safely return to full, high-quality, face-to-face teaching, learning, and research. And we also join a group of now 380 other U.S. universities, and that's a number that's growing every week, that have made similar announcements. As Libby Char, MD, and our own UH alum and Hawaii Director of Health advised, we're really hopeful that with the new CDC guidance and this vaccination requirement in place for students, by fall, we really may be able to return to mask-free classrooms without physical distancing requirements. And again, that is consistently what we've heard our students and their parents urge us to try to move toward. But we have also heard the concerns as well, and I just want to comment briefly on those and let the testifiers and others know we're listening and we're processing. First is a concern that the vaccines are experimental. And while I personally would not equate an emergency use authorization with being experimental, we have made it perfectly clear the requirement will only go into effect when at least one of the vaccines under current emergency use authorization moves to being approved and fully authorized by the FDA. And we expect that to take place this summer. And as with so many things relating to planning for this pandemic, as Wayne Gretzky famously said, we need to skate to where we think the puck will be. And so the decisions we're making now about fall are our best understanding of the conditions we'll be facing in the fall. We've also heard a lot of concerns on behalf of those with medical conditions that preclude vaccination or religious beliefs that preclude vaccination. And we're committed to providing exceptions in those cases. I want to emphasize this is something we do with the current vaccination requirements. And many people don't realize we've had vaccination requirements in place for decades to attend a UH campus in person. These include a TB clearance requirements, but also immunizations for measles, mumps, rubella, the MMR vaccine, tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis, and varicella. In addition, meningococcal conjugate vaccination is also required for first-year students living in on-campus housing. So we understand what it means to have vaccination requirements. We have the infrastructure in place for students to request medical or religious exemptions, and we know how to handle this kind of information safely, securely, and in compliance with all applicable policy requirements, including FERPA and HIPAA, which are often cited as concerns. We know that not everyone agrees, but we believe we've made the decision that's in the best interest of a safe and effective public higher education for all of Hawaii. And that's what we're all about. Commencements have taken place over these past 2 weekends, and all of our campuses did a really amazing job of figuring out how to honor our graduates in these difficult circumstances with some kind of COVID-safe arrangement. We had drive-through, we had walk-through with parents, we had photo ops, we had online speeches and commentaries. I really want to thank all of the faculty and staff across our campuses who worked hard to figure out the right kind of commencement for their students with creativity, commitment, and hard work. What might have been one day of hard work stretched out over days when we made our events much smaller. But we really wanted to create a memorable time for our graduates and their families, and it's an experience that unfortunately the class of 2020 did not get. Thanks to Dan Meisenthal and his team, they assembled a page with really inspiring photos that if you get a chance to look at it, it really should make you all quite proud of your work as regents and the work that we do for the community under your leadership. And as I mentioned, this is really what we're here for. Let me shift a little bit to our numbers. Vice President Tim Dolan will provide a standard quarterly update, but I wanted to share the more recent numbers. As of yesterday, we were just under $86 million in philanthropy for this fiscal year. That now surpasses last year's total of $84.7 million, and that had been our best for a year without one of what I call a unicorn gift, like a Jay Scheidler or a Simons Foundation in the $40 million and up range. In terms of extramural funding, as of this morning, we're just under $424 million. That's about 12% ahead of this date last year. Manoa went over $300 million for this fiscal year just within the last week, and that's up about 7% from last year. And again, these are just our competitive awards, not including the formula-funded HERF grants that we also report on to you. Let me just mention one recent grant that I think is really aligned with what we're trying to do for the state in these difficult times. It's not that big. It's $2.7 million from the Economic Development Agency with a matching requirement that's mostly in kind. And that's to our Office of Innovation and Commercialization. And at the next R&I committee meeting, you'll meet Steve Auerbach, who heads that meeting. And his partner on this particular grant is and at Office of Innovation and Commercialization is Sandra Fujiyama. If that name sounds familiar, she is indeed the goddaughter of former Regent and BOR Chair Wally Fujiyama. And this particular project is entitled Innovation to Impact, and it's focused on faculty-student startups with an accelerator incubator program for them, with a focus on both technology development and workforce development for the innovation sector. So congratulations to Vice President Sirmos and the entire team. Lastly, in numbers, I always like to share with you where we are on enrollment. We at Manoa, which is of course our largest campus, we've just started our new student enrollment period, and as a system we're only about halfway through the numbers we expect to see for fall. So the registration numbers are early and may not be indicative of where we end up. But it's always better to be ahead than behind on any indicator. And as of this morning, we have just about 6% more headcount students enrolled or registered for fall than we did the same day last year. Looking at the early indicators, UH Manoa and UH West Oahu have substantially higher numbers of applications in this year. And when the enrollment managers drill down, and I look in particular at the Manoa numbers every week, We can look at admitted students and deposits received, so that signals some kind of serious intent to register. Manoa is substantially higher on deposits received than last year at this time, and that cuts across both new freshmen and new transfer students in all major categories of resident, non-resident, domestic, and international students. So the hard work over these past few years, and especially this year under pandemic conditions, is really paying off. And I think we've all learned a lot about online practices that we will be continuing even in a post-pandemic environment. I want to say a little bit about athletics, and I think everybody has seen the coverage of the UH Manoa men's volleyball team. I'll just say it's been an amazing, since losing in the national championship 2 years ago to Long Beach State at Long Beach State. The team really committed to themselves, and it was remarkable to see their belief that they could win, and the coaches' support and the support staff support for them. Their season was cut short last year when they were locked in a real duel with BYU as the number 1 and 2 teams in the nation. They had just split a match when their season was abruptly canceled. And again, some of these students who actually had graduated came back into graduate school. Not that they didn't want graduate degrees from UH, which we're very proud of, but they were really committed to themselves and this journey to a national championship. You saw how it came out, and it couldn't have been sweeter, frankly, sweeping BYU in the national championship. We'll have Charlie Wade at the next Intercollegiate Athletics Committee. Thank you to Hilo and Chair Akoba for juggling the agenda on the Coach's Corner to bring in such a timely opportunity for discussion. And I also want to mention that the UH Manoa water polo team, women's water polo team, was ranked 5th in the country, competed in the national championships, but unfortunately fell in the quarterfinals. Work on Ching Field is underway, and you probably saw the pictures in the papers. I really can't say enough about the collaboration between Vice President Django Vea's entire team and Athletic Director David Matlin's team to try to pull off something that I would say the entire rest of the state would have said would be impossible to do. But we are on track right now to be able to seat fans and play football on campus this fall. Next up will be the release by the athletic department of a new ticketing plan. We kind of have a good problem, but it's a bad problem. For the first time in many years, we know we don't have enough seats for all of our fans. We even have fewer seats than we have current season ticket holders. So we know we can't accommodate everyone. We want to keep the community engaged and supportive. So Athletic Director Matlin is really working with community advisors on a delicate balancing act between our season ticket holders, single game sales. We're also trying to be inclusive with the community and give lots of people a chance to watch football. There's a lot of excitement about football on campus, but you won't be surprised. We also need to keep an eye on revenue as well. So I have every confidence that as with many decisions we make, we will have unhappy people, but we have leaders who are doing their best for the university and the community. But I wanted to do something different today and highlight what has really been a great year for our other athletics program that often gets short shrift, particularly in the media. UH Hilo plays Division II. The women's volleyball team, and they played mostly in pods this year for most of the sports, with UH Hilo, Hawaiʻi Pacific, and Chaminade playing together to avoid the difficult travel requirements associated with mainland travel. So they played in Hawaii pods. UH Hilo women's volleyball won the Hawaii pod with a 14-2 record, and they finished with a ranking of 26. That's their highest since 2009. The Hilo women's softball team won the Hawaii pod. They advanced to the NCAA West Regional as the number 5 seed for the first time since 2013. They defeated Western Washington, and they are still playing. Hilo Baseball won the Hawaiʻi Pod and is playing in the Pac-West Conference Pod Series this week to determine the automatic qualifier to NCAA playoffs. And the Hilo men's tennis team also won the Pac-West Championship, the first in the program history, ranked number 6 in the country with a 10-3 record. They were seeded number 5 nationally, won the quarterfinal match against the number 4 seed, but unfortunately lost yesterday to the number 1 team in the country. And to top it all off, UH Hilo was also a finalist for the NCAA Award of Excellence for Community Service, which was highlighted by the teams all planting, harvesting, and donating 10,000 ears of corn to the local food bank. So congratulations to UH Hilo on an amazing and often underappreciated off the island athletic program.